Hey there, welcome back to Module 4, Welcome Sequences. And here in Lesson 4, we're going to talk about creating the sequence, how you're going to do it. So that's what we're chatting about here in this lesson. And then there is an extra kind of bonus lesson after this where I just walk through the swipe copy. But this is the last substantive lesson that we're going to talk about. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about kind of the nitty-gritty details about creating your welcome sequence, how to approach writing your emails, and how many emails to write and how to space them out. So your welcome sequence is where you will really flex your story email muscles and lean into being you. Now, again, there is a separate lesson in the resources tab in the resources section about writing story emails. We're not going to spend a ton of time talking about that here. I just want you to know that in the nurture sequence, I kind of warn that you have to really be careful because people are just getting warmed up to you. So you have to be very careful there. They will have limited patience in your stories. Well, that's kind of true in your welcome sequence, but this is where you really are transitioning and your purpose is to get them to really know you and to understand how you can help them and to understand what you stand for. And again, we talked about this back, I believe it was in lesson 1 here in this module, about how you have to be careful that although the emails are about you, it's really about how you can serve them. But part of that is really starting to build that connection. And so that's what you're doing here. Now, in lesson 2 here in this module, we talked about the topics that you're going to talk about and how that will really help kind of cover what they need to know about you. But another part of what we talked about is you need to help them decide. That's a purpose here you have in your welcome sequence. So your welcome sequence helps them kind of decide, make those important decisions by introducing them to your beliefs into your email style. So those two things combined are going to help them decide, do they believe in what you stand for and do they want to stick around? So by setting out your core values and your core beliefs, you give subscribers the chance to decide whether they agree. You want them to know what you stand for. By telling them those core values, you're going to get it. Now, again, I talk about radical giving as one of my core values, and it's part of my welcome sequence. Well, there's a chance that someone gets on my email list and says, well, I don't believe in that. And that's okay. If they don't want to believe in that, that's fine. But they should know that that's what I believe in. And the same thing with my concept of more cowbell. If they're not going to like the more cowbell thing, they might as well know now and make that decision today. So if they don't agree with your core values, chances are they're going to leave. And that's okay too. We're okay with that. People who don't agree with our approach, with the things that we believe to be true, should not be in our world. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, the other thing is we said we want them to decide whether to stay or whether to go. By leaning into being you, you help people decide if they like your style. So this isn't just liking what you stand for, but actually kind of liking your email style. Because let's be honest, we are not all for everybody, and that's okay. Now, if you employ a greatest hits approach from the last lesson, you're naturally, get people who don't like your style to unsubscribe because you are hitting, you're using kind of the greatest hits that already employ your style. So people who don't like it will see it and be like, not for me, I'm out of here. And so that's one way you're going to do it if you have a greatest hits. Now, if you're writing these emails from scratch, I want you to really employ kind of the unique email voice you established back in Module 1. In Lesson 3, there was a lesson about developing your email style. Now, hopefully you did that homework back in Module 1. If you didn't, you really need to do it now. You need to develop that style and lean into the style that you want to use in your emails. And here's another thing. If there are things that are likely to offend some people and that you will be doing in your emails on a weekly basis, you should warn subscribers that they're coming. For example, we have early emails in various sequences that tell people to unsubscribe if a bit of cussing is going to offend them. Because look, I don't drop the F-bomb. I don't do curse at people, but I drop some cuss words from time to time in my email because that's how I talk. And I want people to know that, because if that's going to offend them, they should go ahead and leave now. So again, telling them that, literally doing this. Now, another kind of pro tip you can use here is I have an introductory email that is not a greatest hits, where I basically tell people, buckle up, it's going to get weird. I tell people what's coming. I tell people they're going to get some over the top, and if they're not going to like these things, etc., they should literally just go down and click that unsubscribe button. Literally inviting people to do that has power, because then they've made the decision to stay. And again, all of this is about culling people who aren't going to like you at the beginning, so that once they get on your weekly emails, you're less likely to have objections or problems. So that's what you need to be thinking about when you're writing these things. Take the story email structure and use it and dive in. Now, let's talk about the number of emails, because this is something that I know a lot of people have questions about. And you're not going to love this advice, but there isn't a set number of emails. I can't say write 6 or write 7 or write 8 or write 12. There is no number I can give you. It depends. Basically, you need enough emails to cover the topics that are relevant from lesson 2. So theoretically, you could have a sequence that was 6 emails long if you had, one of each of those topics. But you might have more, or you might have less. If, for example, you don't have a secondary freebie, well, you're not going to have a secondary freebie email. So you'll have to decide based upon the work you did back in lesson 2 in this module, where you'll kind of decide how to do it. Now, determining how many emails to send about each topic is a delicate balance. In other words, you have an option, and at various points during kind of lesson 2, I talked about you could send one where you talk about multiple things, or you could send multiple emails about this topic. And there is a delicate balance that you have to strike and decide which way you want to go. Sending more emails in your welcome sequence will generally do a better job of warming prospects up, but it also means more time until they're getting weekly and promo emails. Again, what I mean by this is breaking up these topics and sending multiple emails about core values, for example, will tend to warm your prospects up more, because you are being very specific and they are really getting to know you at a deep level. But if you're going to send, for example, 3 emails about that versus just one, well, guess what? That means they're going to be in your welcome sequence a longer period of time. So it's going to take longer for you to be able to promote to them if you are doing promotions. So this is why I'm saying it's a delicate balance, and you have to figure out what works for you. Now, what I will tell you is I've opted for a longer sequence. It's 12 emails long in my welcome sequence, and between that and the nurture sequence, it's 7 to 8 weeks after someone downloads a freebie before they start getting the weekly emails or promotional emails. That means, for example, if I add someone to my list at the beginning of May, they're not going to be someone who gets any promotional emails until July. So in other words, it means I have to be thinking about that as I am crafting promotions, and I have to be thinking far in advance that people I'm getting on my list today are people that I won't be promoting to for almost a whole quarter. And that's something you have to think about, and you have to make that balance. If you use a longer sequence, if you have a long-term view, I believe that having a longer sequence is generally going to be better. You just have to be thinking about it and be thinking about it in advance. Now, that's the number of emails, and you'll go through your list and come up with, do you want to send 1 or 2 or 3 in the different topic areas, and then you'll have the complete list. Now let's talk about spacing of the emails. People always ask me, how frequently should I send this? And you'll remember with nurture sequences, I said generally you're going to send it every day or every other day. Your welcome sequence is different. You're going to start to slow down at that point. You want to use your welcome sequence to start to train your subscribers for when they land on your weekly email list. So you want to get them used to seeing an email from you when they're going to be doing it again. Now, my general recommendation is to send welcome sequence emails twice per week. One of those on the day that you will be sending your standard weekly email, and then the other one kind of on an opposing day. In other words, not back to back, but on a future day of the week. How you do this technically within your email system, you can do it in all the systems that we've suggested. It just has to do with setting up waits or setting parameters about when various emails can go out. But you're able to do this in the programs we suggest, which is part of the reason why I suggest things like Karcher, because it allows you to do this. So let's make this very concrete for you so you know how I do it. Because Tuesday is my big weekly email. That is my big podcast email and has been forever. And back when I had a once a week podcast, it was Tuesday. So I sent my welcome sequence emails out Tuesdays and Fridays. So people were getting them twice a week. And Tuesdays and Fridays, so they're getting used to getting an email on Tuesday, which is when they will get a standard email from me about my podcast. Then Fridays just happened because of the way I marketed. That was the second most likely day that they would get an email from me. Then when I went to 2 podcast episodes a week, Tuesdays and Fridays are the days of those podcasts, the days I tend to send emails out. So it just makes sense. I'm training people for what they are going to get and when they're going to be seeing emails from me. So they're starting to get used to the flow. So that's how you space them emails out. So the key lesson takeaway is to lean into being you and telling stories. Use stories as a way to do it in your welcome sequence, and make sure to cover all the core topics from lesson 2. If you do that, that's how you put together a welcome sequence. That's how you're going to make it work. Now, this is the last substantive, like slide-based lesson here in Module 4. But I have a bonus lesson here in Module 4 where I go through 2 different examples of welcome sequences that I have used, an old one that I'm not using anymore, and the current one as I'm recording this. And I explain to you why I did the things I did, how it's ordered, and how each one of those emails falls within kind of the topics. That way you can understand how I've done this. You also get the swipe copy in that lesson, so you'll see the emails I've sent, and you can use those as kind of a guide to think through how you want to create yours. But again, and I talk about this in this lesson, your welcome sequence is where you need to really lean into your voice, lean into being you, not being Bobby. But I'll see you in that bonus lesson. But other than that, we're done here with the welcome sequence. So in the next module, we're going to be talking about weekly emails. I'm going to talk to you about why those weekly emails that you send week in and week out are the most important ones you send. We're going to talk about how to come up with the stories, because that's a place where a lot of people struggle with the story-based emails, is how do I come up with all the stories for an email every week? So we're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about things like what to do with weekly emails during your launches, because I know that's a topic that comes up quite a bit. So next module, all about weekly emails. I'll see you there, but don't forget you have a bonus lesson here about going through the swipe file.